right, everyone. So we're going to get started. You can hear okay with the mic? Yeah, great. So I'm Kristin Rising up here. I'm an associate professor at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. I have my colleague here, Jed Hollander. You can see his many titles also at Thomas Jefferson. So welcome to our talk today. We're going to be talking with you about writing the abstract and manuscript for acceptance. We are going to make this interactive, so the rules set forth by Judd here are you must all come to the front, you must all be within one seat of someone else. So if you could rearrange yourself to be of such, we're going to try to make this as useful as possible with some actual interaction.
Yeah, so, a lot of times you sit through how to write a paper and it's not really useful and you don't walk out with a skill set. So one of our jobs is to go through, this is how you write a paper, and then have you write a paper. So we're going to go through a couple examples how, at the end of the day, the whole process of writing a paper is a 20-minute thing. And so if you pair up with somebody, then you'll be able to work together with them and do that. If you're not paired with somebody, it's going to just be useless, and you might as well just leave now.
So neither of us have any relevant disclosures to make, and we will dive on in. So before you write your paper, it's really important to do a lot of pre-work. So first, you need to make sure that you've defined a problem. Right? A lot of people come to us and they say, oh, I want to write a paper on, ultrasound. You say, great, but that's like, what is the point of that? What is actually the problem you're trying to describe? And so with defining the problem, it's important to do a literature review first, figure out what have people already done, and also what are then the gaps in what we know from what people have done. And then related to that, really, it's what is the unmet need? You need to define that unmet need that you are going to try to address or answer with a paper. Once you've defined that, then you move on to then saying, I need to design a study that can address the problem. And this is really a balance of what is the most ideal study that you could possibly do or that you would want to do, and then what can you do in the real world. So really, it's all about the project design. Writing cannot rescue a poorly designed project. You can't really or shouldn't be hiding kind of the mistakes that you've made in doing the project. But bad writing certainly can hurt an excellent project. You may do a really amazing study, but if you don't have the skills to be able to actually communicate it to others, it may have really very little impact. So it begins even before your IRB. When you are submitting the IRB, you need to think out and actually do most of the components that are then going to turn into the paper that you write. Your introduction, as we talked about, you need to clarify your unmet need, and that's the introduction that even you will have to give to the IRB. Why is this study important, and what is the hole that we're trying to fill? Your methods need to be thought out. You need to tell the IRB what are your methods for the study going to be. You need to define what data and outcomes you're going to collect. You need to think about your limitations. You want to think about them now because you may identify some that are actually addressable instead of getting to the end of the study when you start to think about them and say, oh gosh, I really wish I had done this differently. This is now a big limitation. You want to somewhat game theory your results and figure out how they will inform the discussion. Anticipate what you may get from this study and then think about what that will lead to in your discussion. Really, you could write the whole paper at this point.
So the other thing that Kristin forgot to tell you is we're doing this lecture a little bit different. So kind of like if you're watching a sports program, she's like, the dry person who's going through the stuff, and I'm the color commentary that just interrupts and says anything that comes to my mind. Because we've worked together enough, she thought I was going to do that anyway. So she said, why don't you just sit down and I'll give the talk and you just interrupt. So we're doing that. So the last point, I think, is critical. And I've mentored a lot of people. And if you write the paper, you don't get lost in the data. And you need to write the paper at some point, and you need to know your introduction, and you need to know the methods, and you need to know the data you're collecting, and you need to know the limitations before you begin the project. You have to say all of that to the IRB. So why not just write your damn paper and be done with it? And for those of you who work with students or residents who may graduate, I won't let a project start till the paper's written. If that resident or student runs away, I don't care. I have the data. We run the analysis. We fill in the numbers. The paper's done. There's never something left on the desk. And I'll give you an example. I'll show you some examples of some stuff that's actually in works right now But my example for that, I'm working with, Ben's son ran this huge 11-center syncope trial, and there's 1 million secondary analyses, and there's gobs and gobs of data. And so there's 2 papers that my group wrote out of that. One's been submitted. One is on the impact of orthostatic vital signs. It's not presented at this meeting. It'll hopefully be at ASAP. On orthostatic vital signs, whether they're abnormal or normal. Now, one can imagine you could run this data with 80 different conglomerations of vital signs and 4 million different outcomes and data points. And if you get the data first, you have no idea what you're doing. We wrote the whole paper and just put XXX everywhere we wanted a result filled in, described the analysis plan we wanted, sent it to Ben and the biostatisticians who filled in the data, and the paper's ready to be submitted. And then, when the data comes back, someone starts saying, oh, look at this, there's 8 million tests, and this one orthostatics is relevant on, even though it's not relevant for most of them. If you get that first, you end up looking at the things that have positive statistical value, and they're meaningless because we just did 8 million tests. So it keeps you really focused by writing your paper first. But for those of you who came in late, we asked everybody to move up front. We're going to make this interactive, and we're going to do our first exercise now. So pair up with somebody sitting next to you and spend literally under a minute deciding what study you're going to do for the rest of this section. Okay, so pick something some of you is interested in. It could be vague. It doesn't have to be a terribly specific study question, but it's going to take you through the process of how to do this. So we're going to time you. We're giving you a minute. Pick a study idea. Work with somebody sitting next to you.